You don't have to know everything, but if you can ask the questions and then you can figure out how those tie into the financials, and you can say, here are the numbers, but here's what they mean. Oh, people will pay money for that all day long. Please believe.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and it's part 2 of our 2-part series with Jeff Bartsch. In this conversation, he'll focus on a tactical approach to adding advisory services, including a simple strategy to help your business. All right, let's get to that conversation. We got Spectrum stuff. It's about moving, and this is where I think the work you do is magical, because when you get the story right and you have people just wanting to buy what you do and pay more for it, even if it's a little more, there's such a big return on that kind of work, right? Because already what we're doing, the compliance work alone, that story needs to be shifted. Because if we go, like, if you rock up and say, hey, yeah, you need some compliance work. Hey, that's what we do. We do compliance work. I mean, that is
just like everyone else.
Just like everyone else, right? So if you are doing that work and you're really great at it, and you don't know that you can even move on to the more advisory thing, having a better story to tell about your firm and what you do and how compliance work is going to transform their life, that is going to be the first step, really. And that'll be a good step to take. So let's maybe talk a little bit about that and how how do you help people do this?
Well, I'll tell you, it begins with that same idea of the character who wants something, overcomes obstacles to get it, and experiences transformation as a result. Apply that to yourself. If you say, who am I? If I went through my entire life thinking I'm Jeff Bartsch, the piano guy, I'm a musician, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life, and all that kind of a thing, that means that I will want different things and I will come up against different obstacles to get me there. Same thing if I'm saying I'm a bookkeeper and my role is to check all the boxes within the compliance world, and I move on to the next client and everyone goes home happy. Well, if that's the identity that I see myself, then that's where that's going to stop. What happens if instead of saying I'm a bookkeeper, I say I'm a financial guide? Just saying, just the very difference of thinking those two different words completely changes everything downstream in one's own personal story. And when you start thinking of yourself differently, then that changes what you do. That changes what you decide to do in your business. That changes who you decide to say, hey, compliance client, we've been doing your books for years now. Would you be interested in talking about how to actually make these numbers make more sense for your business so that you can know how to make the best choices moving forward? I mean, man, when people think of this idea of moving more towards an advisory role, a lot of the times it's because they don't even think of themselves as being allowed to, or that's not who I am. Well, if you start thinking of yourself as someone different, you say, I'm a guide. I'm a financial guide. I'm the financial wilderness guide. So I'm your survival guide in the business wilderness, or I'm your financial Sherpa. I mean, when you start thinking like that, that changes everything. And on that beginning side of that continuum, as you say, when you're saying, how do I get from 0 to 1 with getting my feet wet into an advisory kind of a role, The great news for bookkeepers is you already have the single biggest thing that you need in order to get an advisory client, and that is the trust of your existing clients. You have the trust. That is the number one thing that a financial advisor needs in order for the business owner to say, what do you think? How do these numbers affect how we decide things moving forward? And you don't even have to be an expert in the business. You can just say, this is what I've noticed. Here are some ideas on, here's what I've noticed on some variances. Here's what I've noticed, what's been happening in the past. What do you think about this? What goals do you want to see? What do you think might need to happen? All you have to do is take someone who's already on your client list and says, I trust you based on what you've already done. And you just start saying, hey, would you like to have a conversation about how to take these numbers and start looking forward instead of just looking backwards?
Hmm. So true, so exciting, and the outcome for that is huge.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be, as you say, it doesn't have to be bringing in an entire financial team with a fractional CFO and, just delivering, with this massive tech stack. It can literally be you with with a client who trusts you, and you start saying, hey, for this dollar amount, let's start having a call every month, and let's start talking about how to make these numbers work for you in a more effective way moving forward. It doesn't have to be,
So
you
easy.
don't have to have all the answers
No,
in
you
place.
don't. You don't. And that I think is, it's kind of old school concept that doesn't get talked about all that. It's like many are giving that away for free,
Mhm.
and nobody values free. And
Yeah.
so people probably say, well, no one shows up for those calls, or the client doesn't do anything with the information. And it's like, if I got a coach for free to help me run a marathon, right? I I probably wouldn't ever end up running the marathon.
Yeah.
If I had to pay a whole lot of money, I would show up, right? Because money is a valuable thing. So when you attach something of mine that I attach to it that I value, it changes the relationship completely. And so just something so simple as having a monthly call, but charging them a lot of money for it, would make it really valuable to them and valuable to the person that's leading. And that, if you think you have 10 clients and you add a monthly call for 10 clients at a specific, what's that revenue increase? It's a great strategy and tactic that any of our listener can do today, with not doing much more than just preparing for a call.
Yeah. And being willing to say, I'm not a big time Fortune 500 CFO. That's not where I see myself going. But what I do know is the nuts and bolts of finance, and I have been seeing your numbers, and I care about how your business performs. Let's talk about how to make it perform better. And you know what? There are people who have productized this and say, hey, this is how you approach this process and all that. But even so, you can say, it's just those basic questions of, who am I? What do I want? What is my business? What does my business want? What does my business do? Who are my clients? What do they want? What's getting in their way? All that kind of a thing. It's all tied back to that same framework.
Really
And all of a sudden, you start asking the questions that help people get what they want. And it helps everyone get what they want to.
It really does. And with a call like that, you've unpacked a whole bunch of bits that literally could make up the call. That would give the value. These questions that a lot of the calls would just be questions, right? Figuring out what are the answers to these questions from the owner's perspective. And then from a financial perspective, you got this such a beautiful thing called like actual real metrics that people want, right? It's like if someone's in so many other industries, there's like no metrics. Like, how do we measure this? How do we measure the success of meeting with me every month? Well, probably your profit or something would be better. Like the metrics would be just so clear and you could lay them all out. And that's like a really good model as well for continual business. Like often people are like, oh, like, why would I want to meet with this person for 2 years? Well, if you're seeing year over year an increase in your profit or what you get paid or how much you take out of the business, I mean, you're going to keep paying that. A
100%.
business owners, oh, you know what? I've made too much money. I'm going to stop paying for this, right? It's like if you have a direct correlation to their increase in profit, or I'm just using profit, but like any other key metric that you can really clearly measure in a business, because that's what the bookkeeper is great at, measuring and keeping track of all of it. That in itself is such an interesting. I love that we've drilled into this one. This is a great piece that I don't know. I think it's just so easy that nobody thinks to even do it. That's how easy it is.
Well, I think part of it is it can feel so overwhelming to see that there are so many moving parts, so many parts, so many systems in a business that all have to work. And if we're sitting there saying, we have to know everything about the weeds of everything, that will stop you dead in your tracks. I mean, there was a time in my coaching and consulting work when I was freaking out saying, what? How am I supposed to talk to a virtual CFO if I don't know all the details about how everything in their business works? Well, you don't have to. And the moment I realized that, it just this enormous mental weight just lifted off my mind, because you don't have to be an expert in every single thing. But the thing is, when you know how to ask those questions, when you know how to, so something super tactical here. When we look at profit, that's what we call a trailing indicator. That's a lag indicator. That's a result. When you say, okay, well, when you ask the question, what makes that lag indicator happen? Well, it's all the stuff upstream of it. It's all the stuff in the marketing. It's all the stuff in the sales. It's all the stuff in production. And that stuff all flows downstream into the financials. So when you start asking yourself, okay, looking at this business, what are the things that actually drive this? So if you're a bookkeeping business and you're doing books for a house cleaning operation, and maybe some of the production metrics are how many people, how many full-time employees, how many part-time employees, how many houses are being cleaned. I mean, it's something as simple as how many what's the ratio between your number of people and the number of houses that are being cleaned, and what's the percentage of one of the things that people talk about is utilization rate. What's the utilization rate of your people? When you start asking about those kind of things, and you start asking the business owners about those upstream nuts and bolts things about how they operate their business, you can start figuring out how that ties into the financials. And that's the stuff that nobody knows. You don't have to know everything, but if you can ask the questions, and then you can figure out how those tie into the financials, and you can say, here are the numbers, but here's what they mean. Oh, people will pay money for that all day long. Please believe.
They will. And again, a spectrum. There's like all sorts of things you could do in those calls and analytics. And I know one of my favorite, and it's been transformational for our business, is Profit First, and the work that they do.
Big fan of Mike McAllowitz, by the way.
Yes, we all are around here, and we have Profit First in our business, and the way the numbers that we get, the clarity that we get, and all the models that they use, and technology that they use to lay it all out. it's like just as a business owner to have that experience is transformational. And it's like, misty eyes when I think about it, even like just the clarity it brings me, the weight that gets lifted from my shoulders, and the results that it produces. But that's like, even that I call an advanced move. I think just being able, any client that you have from a financial perspective, and I love the way you frame it, financial guide. If more people use just that in itself, it's like, I'm going to help you guide you. And it's like, you know what? You could just have that call to answer questions. Like, what questions do you have? How do you understand this? Or what things do you want to alter here? Here's all the numbers. This is how much you're spending, or, things going through some of the expenses and really drilling into those and making sure, like, are you clear about this? Or is this good? What's this doing for your business? Like, asking those kind of questions that would be like, well, we spend it on that, going and being a challenger on some of the decisions that are being made, and asking. And that in itself is, when I say challenger, I think that can be a bit risky, and I don't want to use that word, but just to open up.
It can feel scary.
Yeah, it can feel scary. It's not that you're challenging them on, and I don't think that would go well with an owner. You don't want to invoke the ego, but to inquire and have them argue for the decisions that they're making, or justify the decisions that they're making. That in itself, for many business owners, would be a fantastic opportunity. And just a simple, hey, we're going to work together for this many months, and what we want to see, and lay those out in the calls. And we will lay out the metrics and the objectives. And by this time in 12 months, we hope to see that these are the numbers, and we've improved your X, Y, and Z. If you did that, that's such a valuable program that anyone listening right now, there's not one listener that couldn't implement this tomorrow. You have enough expertise, enough, just like you, learning, hey, at first it's like, I can't do this, or how will I do this? It's like you're an expert in what you do, a very good at what you do, and expertise in telling stories and making that all come to life. You don't need to be an expert in what those accountants or any industry. If you decide, you could work in any industry, quite frankly. And same with bookkeepers, they can work in any industry, but if they've worked in one and have that deep, yes, that's where you maybe want to focus. So I love that concept. And I think that in itself helps. Now, just to step back a little bit though, into the work that you do,
mm-hmm.
If someone did this, how do you actually work with clients? Maybe one of our listeners is thinking, gee, this sounds really great. I love this. How do you help them?
Sure. So on just as a point of reference, I talk about at Story Greenlight, we help people attract and keep their ideal advisory clients. And, it's something like, one of my clients is a guy by the name of Tom, and he is a virtual CFO. And he and I were talking about one of his clients who was having some issues with their tax return. And the client was getting really worked up to the point where he was withholding information, and the tax department said, if you withhold information, we can't file your return. And the client was about to leave. Tom and I were talking about this scenario, and he used one of the tools that he and I talked about. With one conversation, he talked that client off the ledge, kept the client from leaving. And because the client didn't leave, Tom estimated that kept about $200,000 of future revenue for the company right there. One communication tool with one conversation. That is how a squishy, air quote, squishy, intangible communication tool can put money in the bank of an advisory company. But there's also a qualitative side to this in terms of working with client-facing interactions. There are times, one of my clients is a lady by the name of Hannah. She was working with one of her end clients who's a CEO who was feeling super stressed. And Hannah and I were talking about why that was. Well, the long and the short of it was, we figured out that Hannah's CEO client was worried about protecting the future value of her company because she wanted to be acquired and she wanted to exit, but she really, really cared about her people and providing them a compensation package for right now. And she thought that it was this binary thing. She had to choose between the two. And Hannah realized that she could adjust her forecast to the client and say, here's what would have to happen in order for you to honor both sides. And when she told me that when she presented that to her client, the client ended up bursting into tears of happiness. I mean, can you imagine making your clients cry with happiness? So you have, and just to be very clear on this, clients who cry with happiness feel great things with you and feel great things for you and your company, and they stay with you and pay you lots of extra money. So all of that kind of thing, communication skills, communication strategy based around this, starting from that one framework that I've been talking about in this conversation here, that can help you truly connect and communicate with your clients. But also communication, it stretches to everything that involves people. And you ask about how do I work with my clients? Some of that involves working with client-facing interactions. Another part of it ends up saying, okay, what is the message that we're putting out into the world? Because it's one thing to provide a compliance process, and you can have an EA or CPA after your name, and everyone automatically trusts that, you have those letters, so we trust that you know how to do the compliance work. You can oversee an audit, you can run our taxes, et cetera. But when it comes to being someone who the business owner will trust you to say, you know my business. Oh, you know what the word, I'm a trucker. You know what the word deadhead means? Oh, yeah, that kind of a thing. That's when you start putting a message out into the world that says, I know your business, and the ideal prospect starts saying, oh, yeah, you do. Let's talk, because I believe you know my business, and I believe that you can help me get what I want in my business. So part of it is client facing, but another part of it is, what is the messaging that you're putting out into the world, so that you're not like every other financial person out there who does the same thing. You now are a financial guide. You are an advisor who knows this specific industry. And they say, oh, yes, we recognize that you know us. Let's talk. And that's how you start attracting your ideal clients.
That's beautiful. And very well said. And I would say, just even listening to you thinking, a lot of people would go and like, oh, I need to redo my website, or I need to refresh my website. And they would think that,
heck, man, I need to revise my website.
Yeah.
It never stops.
It never stops. But I think what people think is that they're going to a person who does websites is going to help them figure all this stuff out, or say it in a place that's, or them doing it themselves, quite frankly. Mm-hmm. And that's the magic piece about, I think, working with someone like yourself, is to figure all of that out before you refresh your website, so that what you do put on the website actually makes a difference, right? That's what are you putting on? It's just the same thing that a bookkeeper would tell a business owner about compliance work. What goes into the business, garbage in, garbage out. It's the same with the website. If you put garbage on there that doesn't make any sense, or is blasé and the same as everyone else, it's not going to make a difference.
And just to be clear about this, people might say, this doesn't really matter. I'm just going to outsource this. I can let someone else take care of this. You cannot outsource messaging. We are all messaging to the world every minute of every day. The question is it working? Is it connecting? Is it a message that is shaped in light of who you are and who you're for? And those are the kind of questions that say, okay, well, what do I say, and why do I say it? And then who do I say it to? And how does the message spread? So that is, it's not just about how do I do marketing? How do I do all these other things? it all depends on what that message is from the beginning.
You know what? There's so much opportunity in this area alone that can make a massive difference to the way our listener is doing business in the world.
Yep.
And I think this has been a fantastic conversation. And I think there's been some really great, I love tactical stuff. Some people don't. But the people who are listening, hopefully they do, is when you can listen to a podcast and actually hear enough that you can actually go out and execute on something. And I think we've done that today, which I just love, right? Valuable stuff. Certainly there's a boatload of other things you can do to improve on that tactic. But that one piece around just getting out there and, start up an advisory component to your business with just meeting with clients. If that's where you're going to start, that'd be a great place to start. And a lot of great things would unfold from that. And so I want to thank you, Jeff, for being on the show, helping us unpack that. But if our listener, as we've discovered, you've got great knowledge here, you've got wonderful expertise in this. If they wanted to learn more about you or even work with you, what would be the best way for them to take that step?
Well, I would say there are two elements to this. Sometimes people, they just need to get more ideas. They need to get more, just wrap their heads around things. If you're in a place where you want to wrap your head around some more of these ideas, I actually have a limited edition podcast with just a handful of episodes that I've put together that lay down all these ideas. They just sit on top of each other. So you can go to a special page specifically for listeners of Successful Bookkeeper. You go to storygreenlight.com/bookkeeper. That's storygreenlight.com/bookkeeper. And that'll tell you how to access those specific episodes that'll lay down all these ideas. And then the second thing is, if you are in a place where you say, I'm really connecting with these ideas, and I'd like to see them put into place for myself in a personalized way, then as a special gift for listeners of the podcast, I would like to offer you a complimentary one-on-one coaching session with me. And when you go to storygreenlight.com/bookkeeper, you can find out how to do that. And you can also send an email directly to hello@storygreenlight.com. Because the thing is, there is so much value to be brought into the world. Business owners are desperate for what bookkeepers and accountants have to offer. And it is so achievable with what you already have and what you already know. And let's make that happen. So if you'd like to have a conversation about that, storygreenlight.com/bookkeeper.
Beautiful. That is fantastic, Jeff. And thank you for doing so much for our listener and bringing so much value today. But it sounds like you've done a whole lot of work to drive even more value. And thank you for the complimentary call. I think that would be a great step for many of our listeners. So I want to thank you for that and for your generosity in being on the show.
Thank you, Michael.
I had a fantastic conversation with Jeff. Big thank you to him for being on the show, and hope you, the listener, receives some great helpful takeaways. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.